Welcome, gamers and game curious, to RPG Obsession, the podcast where passion meets inspiration. I'm your host, Spike Murphy Rose, and this episode we are speaking with Brazilian sci-fi and fantasy artist Luiz Prado. You can find his work gracing dozens and dozens of products that you can find on DriveThruRPG, as well as many other places online. Check the show notes below. Be aware, this interview starts rather abruptly, as Luiz and I, sharing our technological woes, quickly turned to a discussion of much deeper and more interesting topics that I thought our listeners would be interested in hearing. So with that said, let's begin.
I have a display here, the ones like a syntax similar, have a Huion, the ones you draw directly on the screen. And one day I was, they had this Windows update and all. One day I was working and nothing was working. Like the pen was messed up, like no sensibility whatsoever. And I was like, what the hell? What's happening? And then I kept like reinstalling the drives and everything. And I look around and people was having the same issue with like the pen and everything. Well, wait a minute, like, is this a Windows thing? What's happening? And then it took me forever to figure out it was like something about the Windows update that just messed up the Huion driver. They needed to release a new one, a new driver. So yeah, that happened like not so long ago. And it is like, I hate to fight against the tool. This is the thing. I just want something to work that works. So
Right.
if it's working, I
Yeah.
will not update. Like I never update anything at all. I'm still using Photoshop CS6 because it's the most convenient one. But if I could, I would still be using like Photoshop CS2, the old one, because that one was perfect. Like nothing crashed all the time.
Mhm.
Same thing for the
Yeah.
Clip Studio. Like I use Clip Studio for my line art, and if it wasn't for like convenience sake of the user licensing and everything, like I would still be using that the first one, the Mangai Studio from like 2012, I guess, because for me that one was already perfect. Like the sensibility was in place, and Clip
Mhm.
Studio is cool, but I don't know. Like sometimes I feel like something is missing here and there in the software. But yeah, that's one of the things.
Yeah.
Like bring your tools to a comfort place where you can just pick it up and go with it. Like no back and forth with updates and going to drive issues or anything like. That's like one of
Mhm.
the major things for digital artists. At least like traditional artists, I know that there's a lot of planning involved. Like you have to prepare your canvas, prepare like the surface, seal the surface, prepare like the underpainting, prepare like for everything to have the references and all. So when you pick up the brushes, paint, it's like a dive. You just dive in and you spend the whole day,
Mhm.
and you don't have like Windows constantly like notifications bumping you when you work on a screen, because that's one of the major issues for digital artists. At least like you're working on a computer and there's like the internet is right there, Facebook is right there.
Mhm.
So it's so tempting to just hop in to check Instagram, hop in to check Facebook, hop in to check your emails, oh,
Mhm.
what about that thing I bought from Amazon? Is it coming already? What's the status?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's checking out Kickstarter updates all the time. Like, oh, is there
Yeah,
an
yeah.
update here? Is there?
Go on the page and press F5 all the time.
Mhm. Yeah, it's especially when that between that and Patreon, I've always got something new like coming in.
Mm.
Like, here's a new draft of something or new content, and
Hmm.
yeah.
That's what like
Okay.
sucks the time away.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's definitely something I have to like manage and struggle with as well, just because I'm working on my computer all day.
Hmm.
Both for my work and then it's also what I do for fun. But it's
Yeah,
like makes it easy for that to bleed, and creating that boundary can be difficult.
exactly. Like the most difficult thing to learn, it's not like anatomy, perspective, color theory. The most difficult thing to learn is discipline. Is to have the
Hmm.
discipline to sit in your chair all day long and draw and do the best you can for the work you're in. So yeah, that was like for me the biggest struggle that I personally went through was like to sit my butt in the chair 1 hour before I would go to work and study, make my studies and make my challenges, I guess, and try to learn more stuff. And then after work, after I arrived from my day job, I would like do it again. That was the hardest part. It's like going to the gym You don't
Mhm.
want to do that. Some days you are just like just wanna eat chips. You just wanna sit on the
Mhm.
couch and watch a whole series. Like, yeah, that was that's the thing that nowadays too. Like we have so much stuff to entertain ourselves that it's easy to get distracted.
Right.
So
It's always there. It's always low-hanging fruit.
yeah, yeah, it's like for me personally, like I have to work, I just pick up my phone and I threw it away so I can focus. Like that's what I tell my wife. I'm gonna go to the studio, gonna close the door, and I'm not here. Like unless there's an emergency, don't don't
Mhm.
call me. So yeah, I'm often like hiding my phone from myself because if I look at this little screen and there's a ton of notifications, ton of emails that oh my god, what's most important than do the thing that I want to do that follow my dreams is to pick up my phone and see Instagram notifications. That's so
Yeah.
yeah, that's like
Well, and
a mind trick, I guess. I don't know.
mhm. Well, and they're these apps on our phones, like, all of them are actively competing for our attention, and that's
Mhm.
what they put their, research into, finding the best ways to try and get our attention, to get us those quick, easy little, kicks of dopamine from when we see notifications, from when we see
Exactly.
we get that kind of, like, social high, essentially,
Yeah.
and in short term, it's easy to get that to have that interest, like or have your sorry, to have that, like, grab your interest and distract you.
Yeah. A quick chip dopamine kick.
Mhm,
Yeah. Like
and that's actually
the most precious thing nowadays is your time. Like your time is everything. Like it's the most precious thing that you can have now. Like if you can manage your time to do everything you have to do and you still take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of like your pets, take care of your house. Like there's only 24 hours in the day. And if you
mhm,
have a passion, if you have a dream, if you have something you want to go towards, don't waste your time like with silly things. Like we're only getting older. Like
yeah,
yeah, that's the thing that I have to keep juggling things like with 3 or 4 or 5 balls at the same time. So pretty much like I'm trying to go back to gym. I just got back last week to the gym, trying to take care of my health a little bit better because I was really sedentary. I wasn't doing anything.
mhm,
I was feeling like tired all the time, feeling some back
well, yeah,
pains. So yeah, I'm
I
forcing
I
myself.
I 100% feeling you.
Oh boy, like that was the thing. I just got back to the gym and I was all pumped. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go back to the gym, gonna lift the same weights I was lifting 3 years ago. And then I put up the
Oh,
weights and I started like
no.
pumping in. And then in the other day, I couldn't even lift my arm. I was like, oh no, man, like it happened.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
need to go slower, pump the brakes a little bit. But
mhm,
that's the thing, like juggling time is such a task that you need to sit down and plan your schedule ahead so you can see the road. That's the only thing too. The other thing too. If you see the road ahead of you, you won't be drifting apart. If you see the path ahead of you, this is the thing that I need to do today. These are the tasks I need to tackle down. It's easier for you to manage your time to focus on what really matters. That's the thing. Either for your entertainment, your hobby, your family, basically, yeah, life as an artist or as a freelance, as a professional, as a writer, in general, as a human being, it's basically that, like the finitude of life, I guess. That's the beauty of it. And
mhm,
like what will be your let's say your gravestone? What will you left on your gravestone?
mhm.
Like
Well, and that's
what's that?
go on.
No, no, I was just saying that what will be on your gravestone? Like he tried or like he wasted time until time went out. And yeah, that's the things that sometimes gets me pumped more to keep following my passions, keep following like what I wanna left for my kid, what I wanna left as a legacy, I guess. So
Mhm.
yeah, like make it
Well,
matters.
yeah, our mortality defines a lot of what the human experience is, and that's
Exactly.
something that we see reflected. I mean, that we explore in so many different ways. Whether I mean, for me, what comes to mind is Isaac Asimov's Bicentennial Man,
Mhm.
which was adapted into a movie. But that was the first short story I ever read that made me cry. And
Yeah.
it's the story of this robot that wants to be human and aspires to that. And ultimately the final step that he takes, because he realizes he wants to be recognized as a human being
Yeah.
and has all organic components, but is still not quite there, and makes the choice to, uh, uh,
Go old.
basically create a mechanism that will let him grow old and die.
Yeah.
And because he realized that mortality is like fundamental to the essence of the human experience. And we see that in fantasy plenty of times, of course. It's seen as the defining trait of humanity of the younger races compared to longer lived fantasy races that like
Yeah.
elves or dwarves or the many extraplanar entities out there.
Yeah. And
Uh,
you see that like the elves, for instance, they got like indifferent, to the world around them.
mhm,
And the humans are like all fairy up, and they are pretty much like the the hobbits. Yeah, basically the hobbits. They have this, the beauty of life is their essence. Like they are always
mhm.
like enjoying life and friends and family and parties and everything. Like that's like the, I guess, like the cheery up spirit, I guess.
Mhm. They are enjoying life and that journey, and they have an appreciation of it. Whereas certainly, I think that globally, and certainly over our lifetimes, we've seen as it gets more difficult to make ends meet as wealth disparity has risen and cost of living has risen, but wages in general have not risen to match that. There's more time is more commodified. I know I feel that pressure, and I'm sure you do too, but there's always this feeling that what you should be doing, like, every moment of your day, if you're not at work, like, you should be trying to monetize your time constantly, whether it's in what you're doing with your free time or your hobbies, or the things that you're passionate about. You know, you have mentioned before when we've been speaking previously about how you get a lot of people telling you that you should not be doing all the art that you're doing and instead creating like NFT artwork
Oh my
and
god,
trying
no,
to, yeah.
please no. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing. I keep thinking about, like, in my parents and my grandparents. Like at my age, what did they accomplish? Like I'm thinking like, oh my God, my grandparents at my age already had a farm, already had a house.
Right?
They had two cars. Oh my God, they had like all these things they achieved. And then like, we look at society nowadays and we think, oh my God, but things are so difficult to get, to buy a house nowadays. Dude,
Oh, yeah.
US or in Brazil, in the world in general, it's getting so harder and harder that, yeah, basically I don't know, man. Like I try to keep my spirit up for the future, fingers crossed for the
Mhm.
best all the time. But I see that that's like the tendency for the decades that came by and that are going through. And yeah, I don't know. I just try my best to make my mark in the world and try to achieve great things as like my grandparents did and my ancestors did. And yeah, I'm just like, life is too short for us to not at least try to don't like, we only for ourselves, like for that little kid who had a dream, who had like a vision of a sense of fulfillment in
Mhm.
his adulthood, like that silly question, what will you be when you grow up, and that's the thing, we only own things for ourselves. Like we are the ones that need to do something about it. Nobody else will.
Right. Right. Like ultimately we own our experience. We are the only one that is able to decide things for ourselves. There are things that we all have forced on us in one way or another.
Mhm.
But yeah, ultimately you're the only one that you can control, and that is the control that we have over our experience is the choices that we make. And I feel the same way about, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. I've worn a lot of different hats over the years,
Cool.
and
That's a good thing.
uh oh yeah, like on the one hand, I am happy that I have a very broad skill set that I've done everything from activism to being a personal trainer to website design, which is what I'm doing now, and all kinds of other stuff in between there. A stint as a bodybuilder, but it it is something that I started to realize as I got older. Is like, how am I using my time? Like, I don't want to be spending my time on things that ultimately don't give me long term fulfillment, that don't
Yeah.
fill that tank that I have of just energy and vitality that we all kind of drained from throughout the day with the tasks that we have to do, like going to work and taking care of errands and family and all that kind of stuff. And that can make it hard to have anything left to like put into things that you're passionate about. So,
Exactly.
and that's for my gaming, that's certainly like a point that I hit where I realize like I don't have time anymore for games that don't make me happy for, you know,
Yeah, I told you, I'm playing the
for,
same game since 2015, you know?
oh yeah.
Yeah, playing Fallout 4 since the release, man, and, yeah, over 250 hours of gameplay.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that really dramatically changed how I approached like tabletop RPGs as well. And it got me into running a lot more games because I realized if I want to make sure that I have this experience that I'm looking for, one of the best ways to do that is to create it and then share it with other people.
Exactly.
And for me, that's the closest I get to being an artist these days is in the games that I craft. But that perspective of owning my experience has really been invaluable. And I stray from it because it's easy to project your expectations onto other people or to take your own kind of perspective for granted. But
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, about your relationship with tabletop RPGs in
Mhm.
particular, and I guess how did you first start? Like, were you drawing and doing
Mhm.
creative art before you got into RPGs and video games, or did that come first and then did the art grow out of that?
Dude, I remember back when I was a kid with my brothers, I told you, playing with Legos
Mhm.
and the board games and all. I remember drawing my adventures in Lego. Like I would build up like some scenario in Lego blocks, and then I would draw like the adventure I wanted. Like if it was a treasure hunter going in the jungle, and then he found this treasure, but then there's a giant snake guarding the the
Mhm.
treasure, and then I would draw it. And I remember like thinking about how that sense of pride built up in my heart of like I made this. I took this Lego blocks and I bring it to the next level of adventure, immersive adventure, and that carried on with me until like for like my teenage days when I would like gather with my friends in high school. We would just play like Ravenloft. We would play
Mhm.
like the old Dragon RPGs. We would play like Iron Kingdoms, and then I would just draw
Mm.
for fun my stuff. Like if we would have like a party or scenario, I would just pick up my school notebooks and I would draw in a corner talking with my friends like at lunchtime. And that kept with me like that never really went away. Like the feeling of taking something fantastic like a cartoon, a toy, a tabletop, and bringing it to the next level, like making my own thing. This is my own adventure. That always that always resonated with me more than just pick up the thing that's already done and follow it, follow what's
Mhm.
already designed for you to follow. I would like, what about that side quest and nobody wanted to talk about? What about that little the sewers of the city we are playing? Nobody talked about that. Let's go there. Let's build something in there. I would always like try to go above and beyond with things. Like I used to do fanfic comics of Warcraft, like back in the day when the
Mhm.
Warcraft. I remember those those ancient things called CD-ROMs, the demos.
Yes, yes.
You would buy like in the journals, and
Yeah,
I
you had to operate a crank
yeah
to spin them, right? Like that was
yeah you need to like go there and kick some the kick in the PC like the good old Pentium 4, which was like the best thing ever. And my dad got us some CD-ROM demos of. You remember Commando, the Behind Enemy
Yes.
Lines, the isometric. It's kind of like a turn-based RPG, but it's a strategy game. You have your soldiers, you have your team,
Mhm.
and you need to build a
Yeah, you
strategy to follow the objective, the quests.
yeah, yeah, a fantastic game for any who didn't play it.
Yes,
For instance, if you were born in the past 20 years, it was set in World War II, and you commanded a squad of like the
exactly.
Dirty Dozen, specialized commandos.
Kind of like, yeah, the commandos. There was the Green Beret, the sniper, the sapper, the mariner, the spy, and all those guys. You could build up your strategy to go follow the quest. And I remember playing that demo. There were like only 3 levels to play, and I would play it
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over and over again with my brothers. And I remember like, oh, this is so cool. I need to do it something more. And I would draw my own fanfics of it, my own comic books, little short stories. I would create my own team going on the mission. And that's the thing that fulfilled me. Like that's that sense of the limitation of the system allowed me to build more in my mind. Same thing happened with
Mm-hmm.
Warcraft. Like when I first got my hands in Warcraft, the Reign of Chaos, and then after the Frozen Throne, I would be so obsessed, I guess, with the world building, the characters, the elements, and all. And I would draw little comics of characters that I would create. I created a main protagonist that was pretty much based on Prince Arthas, the Death Knight. And
Mm-hmm.
I created this character and I would just create his little story that was parallel with what was going on with the world of Azeroth. And I remember that this was my thing. This was my world. And
Mm-hmm.
it was so precious to me that, yeah, I would be so proud showing off to my uncles, look what I did. And yeah, I remember that sense, that feeling of I did this. This is my thing. Like I pick up what was presented to me as a baseline, and I would go up and up and up. I would just play the game to see the artwork. That was the thing that stuck with me. Like I would
Mm-hmm.
play those loading screens artwork,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Diablo artworks, the Warcraft artworks. When you were loading the screen, there was this beautiful drawings. Like the Warcraft, the Frozen Throne had this somewhat DDR drawings of black and white, like drawings of the Mountain King. I would copy that looking at the screen. I didn't know about print screen at the time. I didn't know how to print the image, but I would just
Mm-hmm.
play the game to see the image. That was the craziest thing for me. Like those silly things you do when you're young and you don't know what to do with all that energy, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're looking for outlets. You're looking for ways to. I think we all are always looking for ways to express ourselves and to feel
Okay.
seen. And like you said,
Mhm.
like to find ways where we feel like we're leaving our mark, leaving a legacy of some kind. That I think, again, talking about kind of a fundamental aspect of the human experience, we don't want to feel alone. And when we feel like other people can see us, can recognize something that we did, it makes us feel like we're not alone in this experience of going
Exactly.
through life. It gives a sense of worth.
Mhm.
And now, like you have done a lot of work with like a variety. I think I was checking earlier, you have more than at least 50 titles that I could find that were credited with like artwork of yours in it on Dungeon Masters Guild. You've worked with a number of different RPG publishers and companies out there, as well as I know you do commissions too, and have helped bring a lot of people's characters to life as well.
Mhm.
Is that what like how much? I'm wondering what that's like. Like, what is it like when you're bringing someone else's idea to life? And is it that same type of feeling where you get to put your own spin on it? And
Yes.
I'm also curious what it's like when you're giving that work back to them and they're getting to see how you've taken their idea or their character sheet or just some text that they gave you and
Mhm.
turned that into a piece of art. What is that like?
Okay. So first off, the RPG community, the D&D community, they are so passionate about their characters. That's the thing that stands out to me the most, like how passionate they are about the characters, the story, the lore they created for their own character. Again, talking about what I did when, and as a kid, picking up the baseline system and making it more, building it more. So I would get assignments like people are very, very specific about their characters. Like there's a character is a druid, but he have a curse, and the symbol of this curse is a bird cage attached to his knee. I was like, what? What's the backstory? And they would write like dozens and dozens of pages talking about the backstory of the character, about how that curse came to be. That's so personal, and that's what I love about the RPG community. They are so passionate about their own thing that they're creating. And yeah, I would get assignments like this, people wanting me to work on their characters. And I would like, yeah, so look around in my gallery, see if there's anything I did before that matches the style, the aesthetic you want. And then they will, oh, this artwork you did here matches more or less what I have in mind, but the character's personality is like this. So it's always a back and forth talk with the client, with the person, with the character at all, and I'm trying to understand that person point of view of what that character meant to him. And the same thing goes for big clients. Like I'm always trying to understand the feeling of what I need to perform on the artwork. Like what's the mood I need to come up on the artwork. So I would basically soak myself with as much references and as much of what brings up the feeling of that assignment in particular. Like I told you, some artworks are really swell to do. I just sit up and draw and it come out on the other side close to what's supposed to be. And other artworks are like giving birth to a child, where it's like it's
Hmm.
painful. I don't know what I'm doing, and I just keep working. And I hopefully there will be something pretty in the other end when the paint's gone. And I will have a artwork done. But most of the times, for especially for personal commissions, I have more freedom to perform my own spin on people's characters. So let's say like to go crazy with the armor, go crazy with the equipment, go crazy with the powers, the magic, the static. Now, for bigger companies, bigger publisher companies, it's more a little bit. They already have a direction for where you need to go. So you can't go crazy with them because they already have something established, and you need to respect the briefing they're sending to you. But yeah, that's the thing that always like amazes me about the RPG D&D community on how people can bring to themselves, and it reflects on people's personalities, and yeah, that fascinates me. I hope I answered the question.
Oh, absolutely. No, that was really insightful, and I completely agree. I mean, we've been talking about this kind of theme of people wanting to create something and see it brought to life, and there is a magic when you're able to when you're able to collaborate with others and create something where you can all see part of yourself in it, but it's also something that's unique, that stands on its own. That's
Yeah,
certainly the approach that I take to running games or even as a player in games, is trying to think about what is the final product that we're all contributing to here, and how can I celebrate other people's talents in that as well, like what they're good at in like contributing, whether there's someone who's great at the rules or really good in role playing or is really good at just problem solving and dealing with situations.
exactly. Personally, for
You
me, there's no better feeling than going on my social media and see people tagging me on their publication, say, "Hey, this is my character. I commissioned Luiz Prado to bring it to life, and I couldn't be happier. Like, check it out!" And the people enjoying it. There's no better fulfillment for me personally than this, or either would be the character that I painted, or like the miniature I helped make the design, and then there's someone painting it, and they say, "Oh, I'm having a great time painting this miniature. It really reflects my game, my personal thing." And yeah, for me, there's no better, sense of I call it toxic pride, I guess. That feeling like I did it. It's my baby. I'm so glad people are
Mhm.
enjoying it. But yeah, I'm just thankful for being part of this process of bringing people's hobby passions to life. That's like really what makes me get out of the bed in the morning and
Yeah.
do my thing.
Well, you've been incredibly prolific over the years. You've had quite a portfolio of art that you've developed, and your style has evolved incredibly, and particularly over the past 5, 6 years or so. You have a very distinctive look to your art now. Like, I can always tell whenever I see any of it in something, and yeah, it's always incredibly compelling too. Has that been something that has there been a plan for evolving your art style? Has it been more just focusing on certain areas that you wanted to get better at as they came up? Or have there been influences that I guess I'm asking, what are the influences that have helped guide that development over the past few years?
Yeah, at the beginning was like Samwise Didier from Blizzard, the art director for Warcraft. His artwork, like for me, summarizes the fantasy elements of everything. So, as all digital artists, beginners, I would like draw to an extreme, rendering things close similarities to what Samwise did for Warcraft. And I would just go like over the top, like over render stuff, over paint stuff. And through the years, I'm just looking at my, I don't know what my style would be. I guess like your own vision and interpretation of forms, colors, painting, and the building up of shapes. So for me personally, I just go what's my own spice to it, I guess. So
Mm-hmm.
I used to love the old fantasy art books, like pen and ink art books with watercolors on it. They were simple, they were expressive. You could see the craft on it. And that's the thing that I miss on digital art, because
Mm.
digital art can look all the same. If the people come with the same influences, digital art can look the same. And for me, I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to make it believe that I did it. That's my thing. So I would just like do the things that I did on paper. Like I'm often sketching in my sketchbook with my pencils and my watercolors. And that's one thing that I love to do on my own for myself. And I kept thinking, what about I start bringing it slowly to my own artwork? And that's what I have today. Nowadays, I try to bring as much closely as I would do in a paper piece, a traditional piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I was I guess like I spend like 70% of my time in artwork on the drawing, because I really spend a lot and a lot of time drawing the piece first, because that's one
Mm-hmm.
thing that I keep in my mind. If I nail down the line art, the drawing aspect of it, it will be easier for me to bring up the colors, because for me personally, I'm always walking on eggshells as far as colors, because
Mm-hmm.
colors, I'm always looking at it in a watercolor traditional aspect. So I'm going with washes and building up the forms, building up the ambient occlusion. But I'm often like going into the edge of what watercolors allow you, which is like that soft wash. And I'm always like, it's like building a puzzle, I guess. And the sum of all those things that I just talked about, trying to bring up your own personality to the work, trying to translate what is you in that piece. I guess that's the style. But yeah, I'm always trying to grow myself. So I'm always looking to more knowledge, always looking for more insights. I have a network of friends, of close friends of mine, which I'm always asking feedback. So asking them, how can I improve my work? What's wrong with it? 'Cause that's the thing too. Like most people are too kind with you. And that's the thing. I know that they're
Mm.
coming with the best intentions, and they will say nice things about your work. They will say, "Hey, nice job. You did amazing. You're good." That's a positive move, but that can masquerade a little bit of your own faults, And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's when my close range of friends, I ask them feedback and I say, "Hey guys, please be honest. What's wrong with this? Can you give me some feedback on where can I improve myself?" And they will honestly tell me, "Hey, you need to work more on shadows, work more on your forms, work more on
Mm-hmm.
this, work more on that." That's the thing that I recommend people early on their days. Build yourself a network of people you trust, that they will help you grow. They will point at your work and say, "Hey, you did this part good, you did this part bad. You need to work more on this, you need to work more on that." And like that's so healthy for your work as a whole, because
Mm-hmm.
like we spoke before, you want to grow. You want to be the
Yeah.
best version of yourself. And that can only help you grow. Like to take a criticism and to look at that place of the I guess the healthy criticism of
Right.
how can you grow your own thing. That's the thing that
Mm-hmm.
I try to, I guess that's one thing that I always telling people. I'm thankful, but nevertheless satisfied. I'm thankful for what I have now. I'm thankful for the work I'm doing right now, but I'm never ever satisfied, because I want to grow. I want to be able to reach the next level, to bring my artwork, my life as a whole to the next level, to be a better person, to be a better version of me, I guess.
Well, yeah, and I think a big part of that too, that phenomena of people giving lots of compliments and not pointing out areas where there could be improvement. Part of that is just that not everyone knows how to look,
Hmm.
or knows how to parse that information.
Hmm.
I know that my wife is a professional miniatures painter and has an art degree and is skilled in many different mediums, but I'm not able to give great feedback on her miniatures. I can give okay feedback. I know a little bit, but I'm not able to parse what I'm looking at enough to be able to identify some of those like minor areas of improvement of like, hey, you need to add some more orange to this
Isn't that?
blue here to like show where the light is reflecting off of this point because that's just not how I'm looking at it. And she has a community of other miniatures painters that all compete, many of them at the national or international level,
Awesome.
to exactly to do with what you were talking about, to get that constructive criticism, to find to point out those small things that really, unless you have a trained eye, you're not going to be able to easily like see or point that out. And I
Yes.
think that applies to everything too. I mean,
Yes.
with like game systems, writing, anything.
And that falls to the thing that we were talking about earlier, like in the movies, like when some CGI is looking bad, normal people can't tell what it is that is looking bad, but that they can sense that something's up.
Right.
That's the same thing with a painting. Like normal people, like they will look at a professional painter, and they will say, "Yeah, that's this painting looks more or less real." But then when you look closely, you would see that some technical elements that the artist would go like lose on the brushstrokes. Like that's the same thing, that the thing that happens when you start painting. Like you wanna render every little pixel to the realism level, and that's not how your eye perceives things, because your eye will
Hmm.
focus on one object on the focal point, and everything around will get blurry. In a traditional painting, like as the example, you can see that some areas where the artist went a little bit loosely on the brushstrokes to the point where it's just like a smudge on things.
Hmm.
But normal people will look at it and say, yeah, that looks so real. And they can't tell why it looks so real, but they sense it. They sense it. The brain can process that thing and say, yeah, this is looking closely to what, a quote unquote good thing could be. Because,
Hmm.
yeah, of course, art is subjective, like NFTs.
Right. Yes. But exactly, like, there's a while not everyone knows how to perceive, like, the nuance of what they're seeing, like, we do there's generally a sense of, I know what I like. I know what I like when I see it, and I think most folks are able to speak to that at least, but it being able to give that specificity of, like, well, it's the lighting that's off here, or this proportion is wrong, that's where it starts getting, like, more difficult unless you know how to, like, again, to parse what you're seeing to parse that data. I know I know you primarily do digital art, but I'm curious, what is your process these
Mm.
days for the art that you're doing? You're saying you're sketching it a lot beforehand. Are you scanning that in and then doing line art and color on top of that? Or are you, like, sketching
Usually,
by hand and then, redrawing that digitally?
usually I just pick up my sketchbook and I sketch it, the scene, the composition that I wanna do, and when I feel comfortable with it, I just gonna draw straight in the computer, because that's one thing for me personally. Like if I scan a drawing and I go to Photoshop, Eclipse Studio, and try to work through that drawing, I feel like I would just draw it again, because I would look at
Mhm.
it at the little mistakes here and there in a pencil. Say,
Mm.
I need to draw it again. So for me, I just do the sketchbooks for artwork, in particular for a client. I would pick up my sketchbook. I would lay out some composition studies. I would make some, let's say, if the artwork requires a werewolf. So what do I need to know about werewolves? Well, they're a wolf. They have like wolf heads. They have fur. They have like those features that distinguish them as a werewolf. So what
Mhm.
would I do? I would pick up my sketchbook and I would make wolf studies, and I would make them to the point where I feel comfortable enough to draw them from my head. That's the other thing. Like I would do most things in my own head before going after references. Like I would do the
Mm.
sketch, I would do the drawing, and then I would go for the references when I hit a wall. Because if I pick up
Mm.
a reference first, I can so easily go straight on that reference. That's one a guided
Right.
mistake, I guess. So this is what I would do. I would just sketch on my sketchbooks, then I would start over in my display here on my PC digitally, and then I would just go from there.
Yeah, well, I mean, your work has like a very hand-drawn quality to it, which I think really contributes to a lot of it, especially the stuff you've been posting over the past couple of years and producing. It's part of that. It gives it. I want to say organic. It definitely makes the art you've been, it makes it feel like it has more life to it.
Dude,
And
I have
so I
like
know,
I have 500 sketches here in my cabinet screaming for freedom that never saw the light of day. They never
well,
saw Instagram or Facebook. Nobody never saw them. They're just here stashed like in my cabinet, banging on their cabinet wall, trying to get away. But I know
well, eh,
you're gonna get stashed.
hey, one day just collect that all together and release it as like a Kickstarter notebook or something like that.
This is what I wanted to do that. I want to do my own art book thing, but dude, the costs of self-publishing, so
Oh,
tough.
especially right now.
Yeah,
I know Todd Lockwood, who's actually is one of the admins on one of the art groups that we're both in, but
the great
also
Godfather. Shout out to
yes, yes, yeah,
huge
Todd
shout out
Lockwood,
to Todd. He's a great
yeah,
guy, great human being.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, wonderful human being and just like legendary fantasy artist. And the reason why we think dragons look the way they do is in large part because of him.
Yes.
Full credit to Jeff Easley too, of course.
Mhm.
But yeah, the modern look of dragons for the past 20 plus years has been thanks to him. And he put together an art book that he kickstarted just before the pandemic hit. And I know it's just been a nightmare for him ever since with like
Yeah,
shipping and printing and just everything getting
dude.
delayed. And
The printing
yeah,
facility
so
in strike, the shipments of the paper getting shortages and all. Oh my god, I can only imagine the nightmare. Like that's the other
mhm.
thing. I would need to hire someone to help me with the logistics of that because I wouldn't be in a good state of mind to focus on
Oh
my
yeah,
work and at the same time work on my book. That's the other thing I need to think about because yeah, that's another
yeah.
job. Oh my god, I
Oh yeah.
can imagine.
Absolutely. It's the logistics these days, like, there's a lot more opportunity at the same time.
Mhm.
It's you can be self-published, and 10, 20 years ago, it was a lot harder to be able to do that, but there's still a lot of hurdles and a lot of work that goes into coordinating that, especially these days.
Yeah. Just a
Uh
side note, talking about Todd Lockwood, he is one of the reasons that I would like draw on my school notebooks because I had a history book, and talking about the Gauls
mhm.
against the Romans, and there was a painting of Todd Lockwood, the Vercingetorix painting he did, and I would stare at this painting in my history book, and I would just copy it over and over and over and over.
Oh,
That's
wow, that's incredible.
I think
I
that
didn't know that.
was 2000, 2004, 2005. I can't quite remember, but I remember copying that Vercingetorix over and over and over.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, his like I said, his art is iconic. There are many like memories of like covers of Dragon magazine and pieces of art of his that like I indelibly associate with certain times in my life or certain events. And I was actually just going to ask, who are some of your artistic influences? So obviously Todd
Oh,
Lockwood,
yeah, Todd is
but
one of them. Too
yeah,
many
who
to
else?
mention. Like, I guess first came the comic book artists, like always. I'm a child of the 90s, so Jim Lee,
Mhm.
Greg
Oh yeah.
Capullo, Joe Madureira, Andy Kubert, let's say
Mhm.
who else? There's a ton of guys. John Byrne, John Buscema. I had a lot of Conans. My grandfather gave me a ton of Conan magazines with John Buscema
Oh,
work. And
yeah. John
Alfredo,
Buscema's work on those Conants, like I
oh,
see that in your work.
amazing.
Like
And Alfredo Alcala inks. Oh, so good. I still have them here. And then came like the fantasy artists like Samwise Didier and Warcraft. There was the Diablo artist. I can't remember the name. The guy who did the loading screen drawings too. There was the if you remember Lord's War, the anime, that was a huge influence on me too.
oh, I loved Record of Lodoss 4.
Yes,
Yes.
that was amazing. I remember watching that anime. So yeah, this is something else. Like no, there's no Western cartoon doing that. The
Mhm.
oh, it was pretty cool, and there was a lot
So,
of
yeah,
guys, mostly
for
like
those not familiar, Record of Lodoss War is an anime and manga that was actually inspired by the Dungeons and Dragons game
exactly.
that the creators were like playing and running for each other. And so it was one of the first, and it was a serious anime as well. It
Mhm,
didn't have like the comedy elements that animes like Slayers did, but
mhm,
it was what the Vox Machina cartoon is
exactly.
before Vox Machina.
Yeah, the Lord's War is less edgy, I guess, but they're
Yeah.
more straightforward fantasy, stereotypical, like knights, dwarves, elves, and all, Dark Lord and all. But there was too the artist from the Final Fantasy series, the Katsuya Terada. I remember Final Fantasy 6 had a huge impact on me. Final Fantasy 7,
Oh,
8.
yes.
I played them all together, like 6, 7, and 8. I remember 6 had this so cool, distinctive style, steampunkish machines with like knights and all. Was such a cool design elements. And I remember also talking about those ancient magazines with the CD-ROMs, the demos.
Mm-hmm.
Those magazines had a ton of artwork. That's the thing that
Yes.
I would get them, and I would just like look at the artwork. I was like, yeah, this artwork's so cool, but does not reflect the game. Oh my god, what
Oh,
happened?
right.
The cover is so cool, but the game is so weird, clunky, isometric thing. Like same Final Fantasy had that a lot. Like the artwork, the promotional artworks was amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
you would look at the game, it was like
The
shuddering
character is just
characters.
a blob of a couple colored pixels. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, especially for 6, which had like the Magitech armor, which was so cool
Mm-hmm.
to look and draw, like the Terra machines and the villain, the Kafka. Yeah, Kafka was a pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool. 7 had that Cloud, the characters sheet, I guess, the Cloud, Barrett, the Valentine, and Seed artwork. I would just copy them out. Like I would just pick up the magazines. That's another thing. Like the artwork was a little, sometimes was so small that it could only
Mm-hmm.
see a thumbnail of the artwork, but I would just copy them all on my notebooks and all. Yeah, and then I had nowadays my current influences are of course like guys like Sean Andrew Murray, who did the
Mm-hmm.
Gateway City of Wizards, Justin Gerhard, who did the Lord of the Rings series covers.
Mm.
Justin Gerhard did a ton of RPG covers that I just look at his artwork. Like sometimes before I start my own work, I would just like go to my references folders, like my reference artist folders. I would just look at Justin's artwork for the longest time before I start anything, so I can soak as much information as
Mm-hmm.
possible. Adrian Smith, the guy who did the old Warhammer artworks. Paul Bonner, of course. Paul Bonner is one of the pillars.
Yeah, I definitely see his influence in your artwork as well. He's one of my favorite artists too. My wife and I are huge fans of the Trudvang RPG, and he did all of the art, or most of the art for that.
He also
Yeah.
defined the look of the modern orc, greenish
Oh,
brute.
really?
Yeah, greenish brute guys with tusks and all. Like Warcraft took a huge influence from his work back in the
Oh,
day.
wow. I was not aware.
Yeah. The Blizzard guy is someone that tells it to people in cons that his biggest influence was Paul Bonner's work, and I guess was Warhammer orcs, the first ones. And then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he basically defined a lot of the chubbiness of the Warcraft orcs. Like you see the jawline, you see the small
Mm-hmm.
eyes, you see the cheekbones at all, pretty much 101. But yeah, I guess things there's nothing new under the sun. So if you want to create something today, you just pick up 4 or 5 elements of something that's already been done and mix them together and
Mm-hmm.
have a new thing.
Yeah, and I've definitely, I feel like I've seen a little bit of Frazetta in some of your work as well.
Yeah, like his fantastic elements of I guess the how dynamic you can push a scene, how dynamic you can push a composition. It's also hugely influential on me. Like Frazetta, I remember looking at the old what was the band, heavy metal band? Not I want to say Manowar. Is it Manowar? He did the album covers. I had a cousin who had the albums. Manowar, Celtic
I'm not
Frost.
sure.
I remember looking at the magazine that the cover for the albums like Iron Maiden, the Eddie artwork was always cool.
Yes.
My father have a ton of old LPs. This old
Yeah, it is Man of War, and yeah, that
yeah,
is Frazetta covers.
the one with the Viking, right? The Viking with the helmet with wings, the axe. I remember looking at the artwork for the longest time on those old magazines talking about. That's another thing about those old magazines. Like I feel old only talk about this. And they will talk about comics, they will talk about games, they will talk about music, they will talk about everything pop culture related. And I would just
Mm-hmm.
look the artwork and everything. Iron Maiden covers. My father had the LPs. I remember,
Oh,
uh,
Love Maiden.
yeah, my father had the Power Slave, the Live After Death, Aces High, Stranger to
Mm-hmm.
Strangerland, the Seventh Self, a Seventh Son. He
Yeah,
had
yeah,
Killers.
metal album covers have just always been like embraced kind of fantasy inside. They're always trying to. It seems like they're all trying to tell a story with
It's
what's going on. It actually, with because Meatloaf passed recently, one thing that I had not realized was Julie Bell had painted the covers for a number of his biggest albums, and of course she's a very like a storied fantasy artist. So
Yeah, she is right there with Paul Bonner, Frazetta, and Joe Jusco and Boris Vallejo. Boris
hmm
did this very photoreal covers. Like he and Frazetta, that's another thing. Like Frazetta brings up the foundations of fantasy aesthetic and dynamism, I
hmm
guess. His work is electric, is dynamite,
yes,
power.
it moves.
Yes, it have
Yeah.
like you can feel the drama that's going on that scene in particular. But
Mm.
Boris would just draw that to the most realist aspect of it, and to the point where he would like pick up a reference of a rubber mask. That's another part
hmm
of his work. If you look at his work, it will be so realistic that you would sense that the guy is a real guy fighting a rubber monster. That's
hmm
so real it got. Like the monsters does not feel fantastic or like blending in together. He would copy the realism so and so on point that what was a rubber reference, a rubber mask reference, becomes a rubber monster in his work, I guess.
Yeah, one of the guys who runs the comic store that I go to here in town, he had got to see Vallejo paint once,
Mhm.
and what struck him was how fast Boris Vallejo paints. Because even though he's using acrylics,
Mm.
he has all these heaters and blow dryers like
Mhm.
set up around him, just blasting heat onto the canvas
Huh.
because he paints so fast that he literally can't get it to dry fast enough to keep up with the pace that he does
Yeah,
as he's painting these humongous, like photorealistic fantasy paintings.
dude, and he's
Yeah.
still that same frantic rhythm of work. He's like 80 years old now, and he's still
hmm
doing those really amazing big canvas pieces, painting all day long. He and his wife. And that's so amazing for me. Like, yeah, another element of it is that back in the day when they would like be commissioned to do those covers, they needed to be fast because they had to ship it. And they need to, if anything happened, they need to rework it. They need to, make adjustments or make the corrections. Frazetta did that too. Like Frazetta would do covers for comics and for magazines in a whole day. Like he would sit in 8 a.m. and would get out at 8 p.m. and the work would be done. That was the
hmm
fast as hell.
Yeah, yeah, but that speaks to the skill that they have because these techniques are so natural, they're literally just instinctual to
Yeah,
them at that point because they're so practiced with it.
yeah.
Yeah, really,
We get
like,
pumped
really incredible, but
or things with my own stuff. That's the thing. Like I look at those guys at the past. Those guys were blasting artworks, like Jack Kirby as well, the king of comics.
oh,
Jack
yeah, I was
Jack will do 8 pages a day. Who does that? Eight
right?
pages a day. Like, and that was the craziest thing that I saw people talking about his life, his dedication. And he would all be humble to say, "Yeah, I did that because I needed the money. I would have to be fast because I need to pay bills,
Mhm.
take care of my kids and my wife, And that's so humbling about those guys, I guess. Like how prolific.
Yeah, he's doing like he's illustrating all of those in a day, doing dozens of comics. Well, like him and Stan, like and Stan is writing all Stan Lee is writing all of them at the same time because Marvel's basically like them and like a couple of freelancers,
Yeah,
and it's incredible. But you see how like that skill doesn't come from nowhere though either. It's not like these folks just started and were great. You see, like consistently,
yeah,
part of it is like they produce with such speed because they just kept practicing and practicing. They kept
yeah.
producing work. And
Talking
Kirk,
about like passion. Jack would do when
hmm
he was a kid, he found some sort of space travel magazine and he found a magazine thrown on the garbage and that there was a rocket drawing on it. And he would just pick up that dirty magazine and would copy the rocket all over on the wall because he didn't have paper. So he would just draw on the wall over and over and over and over and over again to
huh,
the point where his mom needed to pick up papers for him.
huh, wow.
Yeah,
I mean,
he picked up something that he found. He got so passionate about it that he just created his own things moving forward.
he just had to like you were talking about earlier. He had to
Yeah.
find. He was finding ways to express himself because it had to get out there. And I mean, certainly both him and Frazetta, I think, are two like undeniably they're artwork has that energy, that kind of movement, that dynamism that
Mhm.
they're skilled in many ways, but I think is defining for both of them.
Yeah.
And is
Yeah.
that something that
Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is that something you try to emulate, or that you is that something that you still struggle to do or are still learning from, or is
Yeah, that's something that I'm always like trying to push myself to do more stuff because anytime I feel like I'm getting behind, I'm getting like the tank is getting empty. I would just go and find some documentaries talk about those guys' life of people who did amazing things, and
Mhm,
how they achieved that, and how their lives like resemble that fire of pursuing a goal. And so I'm always like trying to see like people's passion because this is like contagious on me. Like I can feel inspired by those guys who came
mhm,
before me. Like we step on the shoulders of giants, and that's the thing. I wanna be able to at least try to get there. That's the thing as
mhm,
well. Like that's another part of the journey that fewer people get. Like when it comes to a passion, you can only do so much, but you will never get to that sense of fulfillment. Like whenever you think on your own head that when you get that job at that big company,
mhm.
you will be okay. I can die now, but that never
Yeah.
comes. Oh, that will never come. That feeling of feeling fulfillment, I guess, this will never come to you because I have worked for big clients and I can tell that feeling wore off so quickly that
Yeah,
I kept
you
thinking to myself, I should have feeling different. I achieved that goal I had in mind, but what's happening? Why isn't that fulfilling me? Because that was never the goal. The fulfillment was the road you took to get there.
mhm,
That's the thing that they always say: the journey means more than the end goal. And that's another
right.
thing. Don't expect to ever get to that point where you can just I can die now. I don't need to do anything anymore because if you
Mhm.
get to that point, like what else? What's you just beat the
Yeah.
game, so what's left for you to do? And that's one thing that I kept thinking to myself. Will I know that I want to work for those big companies to be on the pipeline of those big projects and all, but I want to be there not only to fulfill myself as a professional, as an artist, as a human being, but to at least say to myself, I tried and I am here, but that does not define me. You're not your work.
Mhm,
Like most people think that their work, especially like artists, musicians, and all, they think that they are defined by their work. And most of the times, people will do that. People will define that people, quote unquote, for their job or for who they are as an artist, as a
mhm,
musician, and all. But you're more than that. That's the thing. Like you are a husband, you are a wife, you are a father, you are like son,
mhm,
you are like there's all those spheres of life that what you're doing right now doesn't mean that you need to seek only one goal to fulfill yourself. That's another thing I say
mhm,
people don't have just art or just like your passion as your main goal. Have another hobby aside from in my case art. Like
mhm.
I'm gonna try myself to go back to the gym to have something outside
Right.
my bubble.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that gets back to what we had spoken about earlier about that, though it is a different, I guess, perspective or facet, a different facet
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Like sometimes, personally talking about my work, most of the times the artwork that I particularly thinks it's my best piece of art is not what people what people enjoys the most. Sometimes the sketch I did
Mhm.
that took me like 20 minutes to do resonates more with people than my fully rendered painting that I spent a whole month on it.
Right, and so that was what I was trying to say is, like, this is another facet of what we're talking about with how we define so much of our life by either, like, productivity or
Mhm.
how or purely along on one perspective, like, only looking at your time or or
Yeah.
how you invested in terms of like, is this making me money, or how productive is this? Or only looking at your life in terms of like,
social
well, what do
value as
other people
well.
think of my
Yeah,
art?
social value. Like,
Yeah. What is
yeah, am I like, does people think that I'm worth it? That's another thing that you were speaking in earlier, like about life choices and trying different things for life. Like, that's another thing people never tell in school to kids, is that you are not defined by your college. Like, that's another thing.
Mhm.
They are just including kids in the school and telling them, yeah, you need to study to get good grades so you can get a good college and a good day job and all. But that won't define you. You don't need to follow only one path. Like, they will never tell you, like,
Mhm.
you can be a civil engineer, or the other day you can be a chef, restaurant chef, or you can
Mhm.
be a boatman, or you can be a travels agency. That does not define what life choice you are going to make, because this is so personal. Like, one day you're feeling like you want to be, like I said, you want to be architecture or a biologist or a doctor. Another day you might want, what would make me happy, I want to open a hot dog cantina, I just want to open a small
Mhm.
cafe, or I just want to open up, what's to say, the garden to take care of flowers and all. But life, you can make a lot of changes as you're going through. Like, we was talking about my art style as well. Like, I started
Mhm.
with one vision, and now my vision for my work is different. So it's
Right.
changeable. I can change that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to get stuck in
Yeah.
one direction
Yeah, part of that journey is not just taking those steps to reach your
Mhm.
goals, but also updating those
as you go.
goals as you're going along. And that I think that speaks to that you're saying like you're never being satisfied. Like Boris Vallejo is not, and Larry Elmore aren't still painting these massive, difficult paintings in their older and their like golden years, I guess, in their old age because they have
Yes.
to. They're doing it because they are still
Yeah.
striving. They're still trying to push
Dude,
themselves
Paul
and reaching
Dollar,
for
Adrian Smith, they are still doing amazing pieces of artwork.
Mhm,
And yeah, they I don't know, man. They are not old souls, I guess. They're still young souls. That's the thing. Keep your soul young, so you can resonate
mhm,
it to your work. Resonate to what you do, whatever you're going to do. Do with your heart, with your passion, and give 200% of yourself. And but don't let that sucks the life away from you, for your
mhm.
person, for your human aspect, your human being
Yeah.
aspect. That's
Well, that speaks to what you were saying before too about finding that I think that balance. Don't let if you let any one thing dominate your life or how you see
Mhm.
yourself, that can become unhealthy
Exactly.
because we are multifaceted beings, and if you neglect those other parts of yourself, then they atrophy, they
Mhm.
wither. Like not going to the gym for a long
Yeah,
time. And so yeah, it's really important to find those ways and not just that one way to define
life
yourself,
work
but find
balance.
different ways to just yeah, exactly, to find fulfillment, to find accomplishment, to find, contentedness, if not happiness in what you're doing. So one of the refocusing, one of the things that I know that you like to do for in addition to art is of course you are a gamer too. You've been playing Fallout for
Yep.
a long time, which I cannot criticize at all because it's a fantastic game and I'm still playing it as well. But I'm wondering if, and I know you used to play Dungeons and Dragons. Are you still getting the opportunity to play TTRPGs these days, or do you
Yeah.
find yourself just doing more art for them than actually getting to play them?
Dude, both. Like, just before the pandemic hit it, I just gathered around some friends and we were just starting the campaign for our old dragon. We had just
Hmm.
finished the characters and we were building the campaign when the pandemic hit it, and everything was called off. But yeah, nowadays I mostly just work for them. I just create the toys for other kids to play. But I had
Yeah.
a lot of fun, like designing the characters for my team. Like, I did the party, the sketches, I sketchbook here. We were just talking and say, yeah, the campaign should be this, should be
Hmm.
that. We spent like 2 weeks, and then was like December 2019, and
Hmm.
COVID came to Brazil, and everything just gone off.
Hmm.
Nowadays,
We were
I don't know even where the sheets are. Nobody knows where are the sheets. Uh,
I still have some pictures of an initiative tracker floating around because right when the pandemic hit was when a group I'd been running in my home were going to their final confrontation with Tiamat at the end of the
oh,
Tyranny of Dragons
oh,
campaign, and then we just had to call it off.
no.
And we got one session in, and then literally like 3 days
Oh,
later, the California started locking things down again, and so we still need to finish it up.
I
But
can feel the
I
pain.
can certainly relate
I
to
can feel
that.
the pain.
So, do you normally have you gotten to DM much, or have you usually been a
No,
player?
I tried to DM like twice, but I gave up because it was too much of a work for myself. But
Hmm.
have you played
It would
GURPS?
distract you from art.
Yeah, have you played GURPS, the system GURPS?
Yes, yes, the generic universal role playing system for those not familiar with it.
Yes, it was a pretty inventive and tricky system to play. And back in my high school days, I used to gather around my friends and we would just play a campaign where I was a assassin inspired by the
Hmm.
Assassin's Creed character. And I tried to jump a roof and they took us 2 days for doing just that. I needed to get up the roof and open a window. It took us 2 days, just so you guys can have a grasp of how the system works.
Oh
That was
man.
so difficult. That was like the master, the DM just say, yeah, these and these and these guards are like constantly moving the routine around. This is the guarding posts. And this is the vision. The cap vision is right there. You need to jump on a barrel, jump on a can like the torch, and then jump on the roof, and then jump on the roof tiles, and then try to sneak behind the guard. And that took us 2 days. I was the assassin because I needed to
Oh
open the window for the
man.
party to get in, and that took us 2 days. It was so insane. Like every time I tried to climb up the roof, I would make a noise because of a bad dice roll, and
Hmm.
the noise would attract the
Hmm.
guards. And it was, oh my god, I need to hide again. That oh
Oh man, if I were the DM for that, I would have just been like, okay, fine. You know what? Just make a single check, and either you made it or not after
yeah,
after the first day. That would have been
what's
it.
me? No, nowadays I would just throw a smoke bomb and go with it, like kill the guards. And, but I was trying to be like
Hmm.
Assassin's Creed dude, and the bad.
Right.
Eventually, I broke my finger trying to open up the window because of a critical failure. Yeah,
Oh
I
man.
tried to open the window,
Yeah.
broke my finger, and I was like with a penalty on the dexterity. And then inside the room, I needed to open the door, and the door was with a huge brass lock. And in order to open the lock, I tried to roll my saving throws and all, but because of my
Hmm.
finger, I kept like getting penalties for that. And eventually, I just picked up acid and threw it on the lock, the lock and all. But yeah, it was fun. I just wish the DM was more flexible.
Hmm. Yeah, well, flexibility is definitely important, and that kind of gets to, that idea of it being a shared
Mhm.
experience. Normally, as a DM, you try to keep a view of like, well, how is this experience right now for all of my players? But it can be easy to kind of get that tunnel vision, and you're just lost in like, okay, how am I adjudicating this? What are the rules for this? And not thinking about the fact it's like, what? Like 2 days to sneak up to
Yeah,
like through a window is
insane.
boring. Let's
Let's just
let's
throw a
do
smoke bomb
something
and kill
else.
everybody and get inside. Like that's the thing.
Mm.
Like he said, "Oh, you can't alert the guards," but the guards will call the whole battalion, and you guys gonna get arrested. I was like, "Oh, Christ's sake! I need to go sneak." As what I was the rogue at the party, so it was my task. But I just wish if you're hearing this and you're a DM, please, please, please be like water. Try to flexible, like be versatile for your players to make them have fun at least.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely, and I think that's really that is where the nuance comes in as being a DM is learning to be flexible and
Yeah.
responsive to your players and also creating those kinda making sure that you're still guiding them towards fun
Yeah, and don't
outcomes.
don't block
Uh,
them to only one aspect of your camping. Like, oh, this is just that part is only the rogue can go. No, please don't. Just yeah,
oh, yeah,
everybody can
yeah.
take a try. Like even the barbarian who's a bull guy can try to climb up the roof and try to be sneaky. But
So
DM is so that was another thing that I kept thinking to myself. Like if I would DM something, I would be one of those annoying as DMs, which I would be a ton of research for no reason, and nobody would ever never bother themselves to go around it and get the references. Like I would be
mm.
the guy who would just say to the party, "Hey, read this book," to give a clue of what will be like the riddle for the campaign and all. But yeah, I don't know.
Oh, I'm definitely that DM as well. I do way too much research. That's how I became friends with folks like Eric Boyd and like Ed Greenwood was because I was just trying to find out everything I could about the Forgotten Realms
Exactly.
so I could put in all these details into in the campaigns that my players never found out
Yeah,
about.
this was one good thing about the RPGs with my buddies and D&Ds in general. Like that make me read a ton of books. That's a healthy aspect of D&D that brings people
Hmm.
attention to another properties. Like I started reading the Lord of the Rings because of D&D. I started reading like Robinson Crusoe because of D&D. I started reading the Treasure Island. I started reading the classic ones because of D&D. Because D, I would
Hmm.
say, yeah, this is just like that and that classic literature book. I was like, what book? Oh yeah, pick
Hmm.
up this and go read.
And for those who haven't checked, they every edition of D&D has included
Mhm.
recommendations for other media, whether
It's amazing.
movies, books, even music, yeah, and comic books in some cases, to look at to figure out to get a sense for what D&D is, or things that the authors thought were good inspiration
Yeah,
for
this
it.
really
And
for
that's always been
the mood of everything.
mhm. And yeah, like that certainly led me to discover a lot of things that I wouldn't have looked into otherwise. I think that diversity of experience that you can get from role-playing games is so invaluable. For me as a kid, getting to try out scenarios or try on different ways of being was really helpful for working things out as I was like growing up and trying to figure out who I am or what are the things that, that I want to do. So do you have a favorite is there what is one of your favorite game systems, I should say?
Mm,
Because you've mentioned GURPS, I know you've played some
yeah,
D&D, is
I would say,
yeah, and it could be one that is new, it could be one from ages ago
man,
that you played once or never got to play but always loved,
dude, I would
whatever.
say it was is GURPS. As painful as it sounds, GURPS is so like open to interpretation. If you're really good at role playing, like to roll with the punches that can happen in GURPS, that's like so
Mhm,
incredible because that pushes you to think more in depth of your gameplay. Like I told you about my assassin, I needed to pick
mhm,
up a deficiency for him, and I choose like claustrophobia because then I had to
mhm,
invent a story that he was a kid and he got incarcerated in a small box because he was a thief. So people just locked him in a
mm,
small box. So he had to learn how to break the lock inside that box. So he developed a claustrophobia, but because of that, he had like extra agility points, and that was so cool. Like to think more on not defects, but weak points of your character. Like think
yeah,
more them as a character, as like I guess it comes back to that aspect of personality of your own thing, like creating your own world. Like don't be lazy to create your own thing. Like don't do half done things. Like you can get immersed more immersive in GURPS, I guess. I would say GURPS.
mhm. Well
Yeah, I guess that would be.
and I think one of the defining aspects of GURPS was that its design approach, how they were telling you like this game is meant to be played, was much more like this game like is it is a tool to make your games what you want them to be. That was the purpose of GURPS was not to be running a prescribed setting
Mhm.
like this is the Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance or something,
Yeah.
but rather like whatever you want to do. Do you want to tell your own story
Yeah,
in
we try to do.
the Cthulhu
Yeah, I was
mythos
just about to say
or
about Cthulhu. Like, if you want to be a detective in the GURP study for a Cthulhu Mythos scenario, that's perfect. It's the thing you can create so
Mhm.
more depth to that system. And of course, again, talking about references, that made me read Lovecraft stuff back in the day.
Mhm. Right, yeah, it was the, like, references to Cthulhu that I was finding in RPGs that got me interested in Lovecraft, and Robert E.
Mhm.
Howard too. I went through read all the original Conan stories, but yeah, it's the RPGs that we play, like, there is something they do present themselves as being a tool with a certain intended use. And early editions of D&D were definitely more like GURPS, where it was meant to be like make your own world, use this as a tool and make your
Yeah,
own
this is the
product out of
world.
it.
Go do
And
whatever you want.
right, and second edition shifted a lot more to like play in like this is a tool for these worlds for these properties to tell specifically these types of
Mhm.
stories like with Dragonlance and the Forgotten Realms and Ravenloft because they started releasing novels to go with it and published adventures that they could
The
sell
Ravenloft
and
created like was the source of one of my biggest fights among my friends. They left me to die. I got so pissed back in the day. They left me to die. I got so mad at them. Like, oh, I took it personal. I took it
Oh
personal.
yeah.
Guys, how could you? You left me to die. The good old
Oh
days.
man, yeah. I have to admit, as a DM, I've certainly tried to set up scenarios like that before. Usually, the players will rally together, and I'm just like, oh, but
Yeah.
yeah, that can definitely create strife, especially when people are not making that distinction
Yeah, remember we were talking
of in
about
game and out of game.
bringing things personal, like doing the best you can to create more depth to your character, create the lore and everything, and then it's just abandoned to that.
My very first D&D character, or my very first second edition D&D character, I should say, my bard died less than like 5 minutes in. We started playing, and our friend Logan, who was the DM, was just making up a scenario, and it was literally just like there was that was standing there. I was like, "What do you do?" Like, as like, I'm gonna try and pickpocket him. Failed my roll and killed me in one hit.
There was a guy at the beginning when I started picking up commissions. Like he wanted me to draw his tiefling, and I started doing the commission of his tiefling. And then like the next day, he came like sending me a DM. Hey man, are you still working on that tiefling? Like, yeah, I am. Why?
Oh
That
no!
guy just died. I was like, oh.
Oh no!
Oh, what should I do? And I'm like, the commission's half done. I'm half close to be done. And he's like, yeah, man, don't worry about it. Like, yeah, the guy just died, and I don't know how I will feel seeing the work that you're doing done. And I'm like, no, no
Oh
problem.
man!
Just what's the next character you're gonna create? And he told me like, it's going to be an Anzimar, and I was like, yeah, man, just send me the description of the Anzimar. I don't want to give you the depression of looking at the artwork done
Oh man!
and showing to your DM. Like,
Oh,
yeah, this was the character that just died.
that's so bittersweet. I can relate to that because I didn't have a character die, but I ended up having to drop out of a campaign that had a character I really liked in it. And this was only a few weeks after my wife and I, as an anniversary gift to ourselves, we got a painting commissioned of both of us as as some of our D&D characters. And so she was her half orc, like badass monk. And for me, it was my barbarian I had been running. And so we got the painting, and then it was just like, oh no, like I got to drop out of the game. Oh man.
No. Yeah, the same thing
So,
happened once. I was painting, I think it was elven sorceress elven cleric for a guy, and I painted an elf cleric with a wolf companion. And when I just finished the commission, I said to the guy, and he sent me a message. Yeah, it looks awesome, but yeah, last session we had, she was eaten by a kraken, and her face is all melted now. Like she lost the skin of her face. I was like, what? What?
oh my
Tell me
god.
what happened. Like, yeah, she just melted her face because of the acid, but she was able to heal herself through a saving throw. But now she had all these scars across the body, and was like, oh, okay. A
Oh,
constant
man.
reminder of her past beauty.
Wow. Yeah, that's something I think is definitely unique to doing character commission artwork, is that these characters are in live campaigns and changes are going to be
Yeah,
happening as they're going
I
through
got
them.
myself curious now to know how many characters that I painted are now dead.
Oh yeah.
How many of them
Okay.
dead right now?
You should do like an Instagram poll or something and find out how many. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. How many of the characters that have like folks have commissioned from me, like how many of them are still alive now?
yeah, for like 2, 3 years now. I don't know. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and some of those can't. Well, maybe they're in the limbo of the campaign having ended before like anything got resolved,
Yeah,
and so they're just. It'll always be a question mark.
yeah. I mean,
So that is unfortunate. That does touch back on the last campaign that you were in, because that ended,
left it to die.
basically right as it was starting because of COVID.
Oh,
Have
okay.
you been doing any VTT
Oh,
gaming at all?
no, nowadays it's just work. I just live dwelling in my cave in the drawing orcs and elves for a living. In the orc factory. I used to call my studio the little orc factory because of a assignment I got to draw orcs. I did so many orcs and goblins for a card game that I call my studio the little orc factory. But then I did like 50 artworks for a company that never saw the light of day. That's
Oof.
another aspect of if you're thinking to be an artist, be conscious that you work. If it's under an NDA, you might do work that will never see the light of day. Like that depends
Hmm.
on their market department. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
a punch you need to roll with, I guess.
that's something that I've seen a lot more different artists and but even those in like in the kind of the editors and stuff talking about it is artists being able to like when your work reverts back to you and how especially in the era of like Kickstarter and
Mhm.
crowdfunding campaigns, how that's something that artists need to be really aware of. Like you're talking about, because a project may die and never see the light of day, but then that art that you created for it is locked up in that
Mhm.
NDA. And so like it is so for instance, for a project like that, is there some point where that artwork is going to revert, the rights will revert back to you, or are they just sitting on that forever?
Yeah, there are some contracts the NDAs disclosure that in some cases it belongs to them until further notice. In other cases, like after expiration date in 3 years or more, I guess I can't recall, they will if you signal them beforehand, you can ask them before, always ask them before, because if you go ahead and post it, can sound like a little bit of a bad taste move. But yeah,
Mhm.
just be. I think communication is key for that aspect. If the work has like passed like a year or so and you haven't heard back from them, just reach out and ask what's up with it. Like in my case scenario, I never got a response. So I just got
Ugh.
just sitting here in my folder like for 2.5 years now. All those orcs screaming at my drive. But yeah, in any case, like in any profession, communication is key. Try to talk to people. What's
Mhm.
up? What's the pipeline? What's the steps you need to take? Because that this is so much easier to work. I just had an assignment last year with a miniature company, and they were just straightforward. Like, yeah, we need 2 designs that week with you, and it's so swell when things are like when you have an art director that can point you the roadmap. Yeah, we need this and
Mhm.
this by this week. We need this and that by that week. We need this. This is the pipeline. We need this amount of designs
Mhm.
done by that date, and that makes everything go smoother. But yeah,
Yeah, makes it easier to measure your progress, to plan things out, and to be able to visualize like, okay, I know where I need to
Mhm.
get by when. So these are the things I'm going to need to do, or this is what I need to produce by the time I'm going to get
yeah,
there.
yeah, and
Uh,
kick yourself in the butt so you can get up in the morning and do the work you do. Because if you
mhm.
work at home, especially, like you can so easily do nothing. You can
Mhm.
think that everything
Yeah.
else is more important than the wow, I need to clean up the yard. I need to help with the dishes. I need to go out and buy groceries. But yeah, those things are really important too. But time management, back
Balance.
again, time management
Yeah.
is key,
Mhm. So what are there any projects that you're working on right now that
Yes.
you would like to and are able to talk about?
Ah, man, it's like having a frog inside my throat. I'm working for a publication right now for a magazine. Is really awesome. They have a bunch of scenarios. So they have like a sci-fi scenario, they have a fantasy scenario, they have a vintage roaring 20s scenarios, kind of gangster style. So I'm doing some key shots for them, some illustrations, some cover illustrations for them. It's a really cool setting. I'm able to draw a lot of different things that I haven't done before,
Mhm.
and I'm really proud of the work. And at the same time, I'm trying to come up with a personal thing. I'm in talk with some higher ups to see if I can come up with, I don't know, maybe a personal thing. I don't know yet what will come. It all depends to like shortages and printing facilities going on strike and that on. So
Mhm.
like I told you before, self-publishing costs are way over the top for my reach. So I'm in
Right.
talk to see what I can come up with on my own hands. If nothing comes out from publishing houses or deals, I will try to see if I can do like a Kickstarter or
Mhm.
maybe try to come up with my own series. That's another thing for myself. Like a ton of people tell me to do, yeah, just pick up all of the work and publish it as like a codex. You should do like a character codex. But for me personally, I there needs to be like a purpose. No, there needs to be a
Mhm.
project in place for me to have that tunnel vision as if I would be working for a client. Like as as
Mm,
much fun as it sounds to make my own thing, I need to treat it as a job nonetheless. So I need to think straightforward as what will this be? Will it be like an art book?
mhm,
Will it be like a, I don't know. I was thinking a lot about old classic literature stuff. I've done some Dante's Inferno studies, like taking
mm,
the classic poems and doing my own version of the descriptions of the circles of hell, because that's very visual. And I kept thinking to
mhm,
myself, like, I want to be able to do something that feels like 80s heavy metal album cover energy style mixed with B&B classic elements stuff.
mhm. Well, I could see if you did a book where it was just these kind of splash pages of like a heavy metal
Mhm.
cover of you just going all out with like, okay, I'm going to tell a story with this piece of art here, and do a collection of those, and then find. I think it wouldn't be too difficult to find writers,
Yeah.
like different writers for each one of those. Be like, hey, make a 1 page adventure out of this, make a scenario out of it or something.
Kinda like
That could be a really
a
interesting.
description, like a light novel, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost like turn this you create a piece of art, and then you have another creative, like a
Mhm.
writer,
That's another
write
thing to be.
maybe it's a short
Mhm,
story, maybe it's like, on D&D lines, I was thinking like, "Oh, that would be super cool to just have, like, a bunch of 1 or 2 page
mhm.
encounters or just scenarios or adventures or something that are all tied to, like, the different pieces of art there."
Exactly. Like, one thing that, again, like talking about tips and tricks for beginners and all, I'm always sharing work I did as bait to get the work that I want to do right now. So pretty much there was a time like I wanted to do more cover arts. So I would just pick up my best like cover style images and I would just share them like to
Mhm,
see, to signal to people, hey, this is my work. This is the kind of stuff I do. And that's bait to lure more clients in to hire to do that specific thing that you're sharing around. Like that's another thing, like between a jack of all trades and a specialist. Like if you're a jack of all trades and you're sharing around storyboards, comics, animations, covers, and t-shirt designs at all, like people wouldn't know what to hire you for. But if you're
mm,
like a fantasy artist, you do fantasy, you do characters, you do fantastic elements, like it's more likely for you to get hired for people on that niche. Like if you're
mhm,
like a t-shirt designer, you're sharing that sort of work, it's more likely for you to be hired by that sort of company. That's another thing that beginners don't get at the beginning because you're doing basically everything to know what's
mhm,
your thing, either animation, comics, storyboards, or concept art at all. So yeah, for me personally on this project, I just need to figure it out what can bring an audience in because I wanna, like I told you, I wanna pick up like classic literature stuff like Dante's Inferno or Red Hood, a Little Red Hood, Snow White, or Beauty and the Beast, and bring it to my own spin as a way to signal maybe like big publishing houses, big editors to say, hey,
mm,
if you guys are interested in do maybe like a reinterpretation of this sort of work or do like a new edition with new illustrations, because that's another thing. Like anytime you think about classic stuff, you think about this the turn of the century style of artwork. Like few people is looking at the classic stuff that's in public domain. That's another thing too. And they're not doing their own thing in that. And that's something that I keep looking and thinking to myself, there's something there to work on. There's something there. I can't quite see what it is, but there's potential in that nobody's pulling from.
mhm.
Another.
There's
Mhm.
there's unexplored potential
Yeah,
there.
it's kind of like you can sense in the air that that's something that nobody is pulling off, and you feel like the zeitgeist, I guess, of the properties will go that direction soon. It's kind of like
Mhm,
back in like 2015 when all games that released at E3 were like Victorian era, steampunkish guys things. Like
mhm.
Bloodborne, The
Yeah.
Order, Wolfenstein, not Wolfenstein, but Bloodborne. There was Bloodborne, The Order, there was the yeah,
Yeah.
all those games came in at the same time. And if you would look at behind, nobody was touching that. Like there was something, there
Mhm.
was a vacuum on the genre. The same thing happened with zombies. Like zombies before The Walking Dead,
Yes.
they were on a hiatus for like decades. Like I think the latest
Mhm.
big hit of a zombie movie was like Dawn of the Dead from Zack Snyder 2004, I guess. Yeah,
Well, they just did Army of the Dead.
yeah, but
That got released on
but Army
Netflix,
of the
but
Dead
yeah.
was very recent, I guess. I say like
Oh
before The
yeah,
Walking
yeah.
Dead, because The Walking Dead is like the biggest zombie thing that the modern that people can relate to, I guess. But
Oh yeah, yeah,
and then we
absolutely.
get like The Last of Us. We get The Walking Dead. We get The Last of Us. We get like Left 4 Dead, that video game. At the
Hmm.
same year, like close together, we got all those projects coming up in pop culture as a whole, I guess. And that's a lot of things that I sense in the air, like classic literature, like I guess Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, those Brother Grimm classic literatures. Sometime soon in the future someone will do maybe like come back to the origins of the fairy tales, like the true fairy tales,
Hmm.
or maybe like those Russian folk tales of Baba Yaga, and that's the sort of stuff that I haven't seen many people tackle, and there's something that I'm definitely interested in trying to give my own spin to it.
Yeah, well, and I think you're right. Like, I think there's definitely more of an interest that's coming there, in part because we've all been locked down in
Mhm.
pandemic and during the pandemic, and everyone's been exploring media a lot more in its history and looking further back. I
Entertainment.
mean, also the Smithsonian over the past few years, as well as a number of other organizations and libraries, have been making all kinds of classic art and literature publicly available and easily found. Like, you can get 3D printing files now of hundreds of thousands of objects found in Smithsonian museums
Awesome.
now, so that you can even reproduce them at home or just look at them in 3D on your computer, which is, yeah. So if people want to support you or find your work or hire
Mhm.
you, where are the best places to do that these
Well, you
days?
guys can find me at Instagram and pretty simple, Luis Prado all together.
Hmm.
04. I'm sure you're gonna link some stuff there. And there's my Facebook.
Yes.
Just
There'll
follow.
be links in the
Yeah,
description.
Luis Prado at Facebook, Luis Prado Arts. That's my gallery page, I guess. And I think that's really the best places I have. Like I try to have only like these two social medias, because another thing is if you have too many
Mm,
social medias, that can be like another task, another day job for you to manage all those galleries at all. I tried ArtStation before, but I feel like ArtStation is like more of a shiny portfolio rather than an engaging community.
mm,
Like we speaking earlier, like back in the day when I started, I was using DeviantArt. And DeviantArt back in until like 2014, 2015, there was a huge community there of people helping each other, supporting each other, and trying to find gigs for everybody. And like comparing it to ArtStation, which is like just pretty portfolios everywhere. And I feel like
mhm,
it's kind of like I tell people every time, like you're trying to sell bread to bakers. You enter a bakery with your
mm,
little bag of bread and try to sell bread to the baker. Like there's no point, at least for me. But I'm sure that some people can find motivation there. Like I have my account, but I never post anything there. But I just go there to
mm.
see what people are doing amazing things, and there are amazing stuff going on there. But yeah, this is the places you're going to find me:
Yeah.
Instagram and Facebook.
And if folks want to buy you coffee, you are on ko-fi.com, /Luis
They still
Prado
have
as
that.
well.
They haven't banned me yet. Like, tried myself to do a Patreon, but I got banned for like in a week. I don't know why. It never got me a reason, but I got banned.
Well,
Don't know why. They
yeah,
never got me any reasons whatsoever.
yeah. Well, I know it can be a little tricky, the terms and conditions and stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah. Well, regardless, like there are plenty of places to find your work, and of course, your DeviantArt page at Saavedra, correct?
exactly. Oh my
Is
god,
yeah.
where did you find that? I haven't posted anything there in forever. Ugh.
Yeah, well, your
Whatever.
DeviantArt page has like a great gallery of your work over the years as well for anyone who wants to check it out there.
Oh wow, this is
So
so I haven't posted anything there in years. Like last thing I posted there was like a study I did of a Dragon Knight, I guess. But that was 2 years ago, I guess. But yeah,
no, there's more recent stuff on here as well, like the lich drawing or the lich painting that you did.
that Lich, yeah. This was a year ago.
Or maybe it's automatically posted from your
No. I just deleted
Instagram.
it from my
But regardless.
head. Just because DeviantArt
Okay,
got me
so
upset, like how low engagements are there right now.
mm, Well, hopefully we can get you some more views and engagements across all the platforms that you're found on. But I've got one last question for you,
Sure.
Louise. What is a question that you wish I had asked you, and how would you have answered?
Question I wish you had asked me. Let me think about that. I guess that would be actually you did that. What's the next big thing, right? You asked me what's my next goal. Let me see. Question I wish you had made me. I think that would be like what was my biggest struggle, I guess.
Okay. What was your biggest struggle?
I guess finding that convincing myself that I needed at least to try it. Because you can only be so afraid that's to hold you back for a while. You're trying to convince yourself that foggy thing that you don't know what you're stepping into because it's a new profession for myself. I speaking personally, like we spoke earlier, I come from a civil
Hmm.
engineer. I'm a civil engineer, and I used to
Hmm.
work with projects and all, and to make the jump, I guess. And at the same time, right at the beginning of my career, my wife got pregnant, and for me, my biggest struggle, I guess, was to juggle everything all together, like to juggle my career, juggle my life as a husband, as a father, as a professional, and to keep myself motivated to do more and more can.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, like you said, it's easy to fall into that rut of the low hanging fruit, the easy things to distract you, and to become distracted rather than fulfilled.
exactly. And I guess money, yeah, money is always a struggle.
Oh
Exactly
yeah.
in the beginning when you were just transitioning through a profession to another, like another tip for anyone who's wondering to make the jump and try another profession at their lives, like save up money, save as much
Yeah.
as you can because you never know the tomorrow. And that was the thing, like right at the beginning when I made the transition, my wife got pregnant. And
That brings expenses.
exactly, like, and, luckily, I had thought about that, and I saved enough money where I could just make the transition smoother. That's another thing that I would just work
Hmm.
my ass until late at night to try to come up with some sort of security, I guess. That's the thing. We're always at this
Hmm.
stage, and when we wanna make the transition, we want to have some sort of security as if things don't work, what's the plan? Like have a plan for when things don't work. Because that
Hmm.
might work, that might not work, but don't get hold up to the negatives, I guess. Like make the jump, but be cautious, I guess. Because make
Right.
conscious
Like,
choice.
yeah, don't be reckless.
Exactly. Yes, that's a word.
Don't let caution keep get balance. It's don't be reckless with pursuing these things, but at the same time, don't let caution hold you back from pursuing change or fulfillment or the things that'll make you happy in
Yeah, put your
life.
toe in the water cautiously, but don't go cannonball jumping on the water at first. You don't know the depth of the pool.
Exactly. Well, I really appreciate your time, and this has been a really fascinating and insightful interview. And thank you again so much for talking about your experiences and what it's like being a fantasy artist, and of course, like how you came to all this, and giving plenty of insight that I think we can all benefit from, and just that struggle that is life that we're all going through right now.
Yep.
So yeah, I really.
I say thank you, man. Like, it was a wonderful time talking to you. Like, I love talking to people whenever I can't just dwell in my cave, you know. Like, that's the thing.
Mhm.
I'm always like surrounded by my family. I have my wife, I have my kid around me. But it's good to from time to time to talk to other people and have like articulate so those social skills and philosophical elements of pursuing a career at all. Like, was I had a wonderful time here with you too.
Yeah, well, really appreciate it. And we'll definitely have you on again sometime. So, folks, please check out Luiz Prado's art and tune in next time for our next interview.
All right.
Thanks.